Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV. I'm Terry Lipshetz, a senior producer at Lee Enterprises and the co-host of the program, along with first ballot Hall of Famer Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal and a longtime entertainment reporter. Did I set you up good enough this week?
You were too good.
Last week, you were a little disappointed. I didn't hold you into high enough esteem.
There you go. You know, I called my people. My people said, get him on that. What's going on? This is not right. But that's very good. I'm so thrilled. Baseball movies.
Yes.
Are you a big fan or not?
I am. So, we kind of preview beforehand what we might talk about on the show. And I told you yesterday, I am very behind on things right now. I've been watching a little bit here. I'm a little Mandalorian, a little bit of Barry season 4 is back. Succession is back. But I'm squeezing these things in because the New York Mets are in the middle of a West Coast swing. So I'm watching games at like 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I'm a huge baseball fan, Bruce. That's all I like. I buy the baseball package so I can watch the Mets every game. And I probably get 120 games in a year easy.
The Mets are your team, huh?
They are. Yeah, I'm from New York. Because of my dad. He was a Mets fan.
Okay, so
I grew up in New York and Jersey, so
it's the genes. It just through the genes. That's how that works.
And I'm a glutton for punishment too.
Well, it's a lot like being a Cubs fan.
It is.
When you have that winning year, it doesn't get any better than that. But all the baseball movies then that you've been able to squeeze in your lifetime, which do you like? Which ones stand out?
For me, like every year, I don't do this quite as much now because I've got the kids. I've got a lot of things in my life, but I used to before the season or between the spring training and maybe that first month of the season, I would make it a point to watch as many baseball movies as I could year after year. So the ones that I would go to, and I did it this year. First movie I always pop on, Bull Durham. Always start with Bull Durham. Yep.
Because
it takes place in the minor leagues. So to me, it's like I'm getting ready for a full season of baseball. And I love it. It's a great comedy, 1988. You've got Kevin Costner playing that aging catcher who should he kind of higher in the minor league system at that point. He should have been a major leaguer at that point, but he never could quite crack it. Wasn't quite good enough for the big league. So they send him down to A-ball to work with a young pitcher who is Tim Robbins.
Crazy.
He's off the walls. He doesn't, he's bonus baby. And he's got to show him the ropes of both minor leagues, of being a professional baseball player, but it's also kind of life coach as well. So
and then
I love it.
Sarandon.
Susan Sarandon. And of course, Susan and Tim Robbins, they never got married, but they ended up going into a really long-term relationship.
And they have a child or children. But so there was that Bull Durham struck something, right?
Yeah. So Bull Durham is my go-to start movie of the baseball season.
Not year. Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams is kind of like that number 2, which is another, Kevin Costner's got that trifecta of baseball movies. Right. So that is actually the one that I turned on second. And I watched it. It was a little bit tough to watch this year because it's about relationships. It's that relationships between sons and their fathers. It came out a year after Bull Durham, which is kind of funny. But yeah, Field of Dreams, I threw it on. I showed it to the kids for the first time. They enjoyed it this year, but I was like bawling my eyes out from start to finish. My father passed away recently. He's a huge baseball fan. And it was a little tough to watch, especially in that last scene,
Yeah. You can visit the Field of Dreams if you'd like. Oh, you have already?
I have, yeah.
And did you run the bases?
I did. No. So I don't know if you know this, but if you go on Sundays, or at least when I went at the time, I don't know if they changed anything, but if you go on a Sunday during the summer, they bring out a collection of ball players. They walk out of the cornfield and they put on a little bit of an exhibition right there. So it was fun. We went, yeah.
Well, then you got down on the field though, didn't you, to take pictures and stuff?
Oh yeah. We kind of hung out. We sat on the sidelines. We watched the game. It was a little a little long in the tooth. They
Okay.
probably could have shortened it up a little bit, but we took the kids into the corn and walked out and saw the house and bought some trinkets and then
Well,
drove
that
home.
was good. Did
Yeah.
they serve refreshments or not?
They have a concession stand, I believe, that you can make some purchases. It's been a few years. I think I was there in 2016, so it's been a
Okay.
while.
So this was before they put that big stadium up for
Yeah.
okay.
And I know they've expanded and added in like a more proper concession stand and merch and all that stuff. They had things then. I bought a shirt and I don't know, something else, a little Field of Dreams bus, maybe a little toy
Oh,
thing that's
wow.
sitting in a box somewhere that I can't find.
That was always our vacation when I was a kid, is that we would always go see, and I'm sorry, the Minnesota Twins.
Mm.
But we would get there before I think anybody did, because the parents were always making sure that we weren't late. And we would sit there and the stadium was empty. There was nobody there. So I had already kind of scoured the whole place, looked at every piece of merchandise there was, ate like 9 different things. And then by the time the game came, I was okay. I could go home. Now that park is in the Mall of America. You
That's
can
right.
buy home plate in the Mall of America. But I always remember that, and the Twins never won when we were there. So we had to be the bad luck charm for them.
Wow. I have a little Minnesota Twins trivia for you, or a fun fact.
Okay, does it go back to the old days?
Not super old, but do you remember Tom Kelly, the manager of the Twins in the 1980s?
Yes.
So
Yes.
Tom Kelly, he grew up in South Amboy, New Jersey, which is kind of the area where I lived. I played Little League with Tom Kelly Jr.
You're kidding. Was a kid any
No.
good?
He was okay. He was good on the team, and there was a time where we were playing a game when I think the Twins were in town to play the Yankees, and they had an off day. This was the year before Tom Kelly was elevated to manager. I think he was the third base coach at the time,
Okay.
and he was hanging out
Okay.
on the sides and just watching, taking in the game. But Tom Kelly Jr., who sadly passed away, he's about my age. So he's in his mid-40s, and he passed away a year or two ago.
Oh no.
Yeah, tragically. But he had a huge glove, which was given to him by a player, so it's like way too big
Yeah.
for a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, whatever it was at the time. He had this big poofy jacket that said Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome on it. It was fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
So
did Dad yell things to him, or was he pretty good?
he stayed as low key as possible. He didn't want to.
Okay.
He didn't. I think he knew his place, and that was not managing 10-year-olds.
Did you have those bad parents though that did that?
Mine were pretty good with watching. There are definitely, I've run into them. I coach softball now.
No,
I
you
have
get
to deal
out there. Come on.
I periodically, my parents are pretty good, but I've had issues with other parents and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
hey, I know wherever you speak. Okay, well then what about A League of Their Own? Did you like that movie?
Yeah, that one's another favorite of mine with Tom Hanks, and I have yet to watch that remake, the Amazon Prime TV series.
And you know what? I'm very disappointed. They are only going to do a handful of episodes for season 2 to kind of wrap it up. But
Okay.
I think it started in one direction and went in a whole different direction. It was more about what's the term I want to use? It really leaned into the LGBTQ audience.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to somehow say that there were a lot of gay female baseball players back in the day, but that derailed the whole idea of women being treated equally on the field. And I think it got away from the sports aspect and went into a whole other thing with even like a factory nearby. And so the first episode was fine, but then it started waning and I thought, I don't know if I can watch this anymore. And it's not that I have anything against anything that they were doing. It's just, it seemed like bait and switch.
Oh, I still want to maybe go back and watch that. The movie itself with Tom Hanks, I watched it a few months ago with my daughters because I thought it would be a really good one for them. They're about 12 years old now.
Okay.
And I really think it's important in this day and age to make sure that they see really strong female role models.
Sure.
Because you think about it, I mean, things like even high school sports, they weren't playing high school basketball until like the 70s. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
college basketball for women wasn't really a thing until it didn't really break through until the early 1980s.
Title
There's been
IX.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
really taken a long time for women, and I don't even think they've gotten equal footing to this point. It's much better than it used to be. So I think it's really important for my daughters to see really strong positive role models like that in sports. So it was one that I really wanted to watch with them, and they enjoyed it.
They did. Oh, good. Good. How about The Natural? I'm throwing ones out at you.
Yeah, you can do that. The Natural, I like it. I don't love it. I think that's one where a lot of baseball fans absolutely love The Natural. I thought it was a little bit over the top and kind of almost unbelievable. I do like a sense of reality with my baseball movies, and there's tons of legendary baseball players who can do extreme things. I just thought that that was just a little too much for me.
I think it was too glossy. I think it didn't have the reality that it needed. You know?
Yeah.
What about 42?
42 with Chadwick Boseman. That I did watch it. I have not. I'm trying to think when I did. It was really good. I think, that's another one of those movies where from a historical standpoint, I love watching that kind of movie. I like especially Jackie Robinson. He seeing the story, the way he broke in. I love movies that are historically accurate or true. And as somebody who studied history in college too, and being a huge baseball fan. So yeah, 42, solid movie.
Yeah, well, and Chadwick Boseman, if you go back and look at his list of work, he played a lot of people who existed, and that he was so versatile that he'd play these ones. It's amazing that he wasn't nominated for one of those roles, because they were always very inspirational and very believable. I mean, you bought him as any number of people.
Yeah.
How he dug in and actually did the work to be a baseball player, so you'd buy the kind of things he'd do on the field. It was interesting. Okay, Sandlot.
Love the Sandlot. So there's one where I still haven't shown it to the kids because I think my wife isn't too thrilled with some of the themes in it.
Sure.
It's kind of in that they're 12, they can probably watch it. It's fun. It goes back to, I mean,
They've already
obviously
seen it at school.
they probably have. I grew up 70s into the 80s. We played so many baseball games in the mid 80s. My summers as a 11, 12, 13-year-old, we would wake up in the morning, we would walk up to the baseball fields that were at the end of my block. We would play until lunch. We would go home and get lunch. Then we go back and finish playing until the parents got home and had dinner. So for me, like the Sandlot was just an extension.
It was life.
It was life. Yeah, exactly. You're killing me, Smalls.
Yeah. Well, isn't it funny how that film did produce lines that you can repeat and have repeated? I'm sure.
Right.
Bad News Bears, then. Were you a fan of that?
Yeah, and that's probably of the early movies one of my favorites. Now they did, what was it? Bad News Bears.
They did a bunch of them that were bad.
They were bad. That original though is a classic, and I think it gets into, even if you played Little League, you always, and I was on one of those teams where the coach was, I had a coach one time who, the reason why he was coaching was part of community service, because he had like a trunk. It was like literally the Bad News Bears. We didn't have uniforms. It was really weird. So yeah, the Bad News Bears I could very much relate to, and it was a fun movie. Walter Matthau, Tatum O'Neal. It's a good one.
Well, and they took that template and used it for other films like The Mighty Ducks.
Yep.
I mean, you could see the things that it's just, let's just switch the sports. They'll never know. It's the same film.
It is the same film. Yeah. That's all the Mighty Ducks was. Showed the Mighty Ducks to my kids. They did not enjoy it as much as
they
I
didn't
did.
like it.
No. Okay. No.
See, different sport.
Yep.
What other ones do you like? Are there ones that stand out?
One for me. So I'm like I could be like a crazy fan. I've mellowed out in my old age a lot. But Fever Pitch, do you remember Fever Pitch?
Yeah.
And Jimmy Fallon and Drew Barrymore? So that one, it's based on a Nick Hornby movie, or book, Fever Pitch: A Fan's Tale, but it's the book was soccer, right? And they turned it into a movie where Jimmy Fallon is a crazed Boston Red Sox fan whose team never wins and they fail him every year. And he goes through this whole ritual, but at the same time is trying to have like a relationship with a woman. And I always thought it was funny that they were doing it, and then while they were filming that movie, the Red Sox actually were good, and they had to shoot a new ending for it to capture the fact that the Red Sox won the World Series. But it's a fun one. It's from the same author of High Fidelity. So if you're a fan of his book High Fidelity, or the movie that came out years ago, and even there was even a Hulu TV series, but it's a similar theme. I like to think that I was never quite as crazy as Jimmy Fallon's character in that movie, but I probably was a little bit close.
I think it shows that Jimmy Fallon isn't really an actor.
Right.
But they worked well together. Drew and Jimmy were a good pairing on the screen.
It was.
And, you don't really need all the extras. I do wonder what it's like trying to film something like that. Do you just kind of, you're at the park and you do it on the off days, and then they bring in do they have extras, or do they just film on a day that there is a team there? It's fascinating to see how they might play that whole thing. But one of the ones that I like is a series.
Okay.
Brockmire.
Oh yeah, Brockmire.
Hank Azaria,
Yeah.
where he's this kind of washed up announcer.
Yep.
Has to go to this I don't even know what league it would be, team, to be the announcer there. And I always thought it was so funny how they tried to maintain the semblance of, we're professionals. What do you mean? And they were so bad.
Yeah.
And Hank can really do that. He's very good at playing that kind of a role.
I love the first 2 seasons of it. It kind of fizzled out in that last one. I don't know if you made it through the whole way. It was that last season was set in the future, and baseball was kind of on the demise. And
oh God, no.
It was really weird. I enjoyed it. I tried to get I had another friend that got me into it, that he really liked it. We kind of crushed through it one weekend together, and it was really good. I've tried to get a few other people into it who just couldn't get into the concept. I think you have to be a certain level to a baseball fan to maybe appreciate it. Hank Azaria modeled the character a little bit off of Lindsey Nelson, who is a broadcaster for the New York Mets back in the 60s and 70s. So
did he talk like that? Did he?
Yeah, I guess he did. Yeah, it was a little bit more of a deadpan approach to broadcasting.
Maybe I like those kinds of films because it's about losers.
Yeah.
And for some reason you want to just cheer, because if it's a winning team, think of any movies that were winning teams. I don't know that there were. It's always the come from behind concept that seems to work.
So Major League.
Oh my God.
Which is funny because I love Ted Lasso, but Ted Lasso is nothing but a Major League ripoff, just
right.
Soccer instead of baseball. But and I love them both, but Major League is another one which I think has all those quotable moments that you can dig out all the time. And it had such a fun ensemble cast of Charlie Sheen, Tom Berenger, Wesley Snipes. It's fun. And it was filmed in Milwaukee, even though it takes place in Cleveland, that first one.
Wow.
My grandparents went to one of the filmings. They needed fans to fill the stands at Old County Stadium, which is very similar to Municipal Stadium in Cleveland.
And did they say it was fun, or did they say
they enjoyed it?
We're not going back.
They went and they spent the night. I guess they were given instructions to like cheer at this moment, and then they would have to cheer 6 times because they had to keep redoing the take. And it's kind of funny knowing that, having that context that it is County Stadium and that they had to cheer at certain moments. If you go back and watch the movie, even though I can't see my grandparents anywhere in the movie, I can kind of envision them being told, okay, like cheer now, don't cheer now. Look happy, don't look happy. That kind of thing. Cause you can sort of pick through those moments in that movie a little bit.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, somewhere I have baseball cards from Major League.
Do you?
Yeah, they sent it back in the day, and don't ask me where it is, but when the vast heap is sorted and multiplied, we'll find it in there, and I'll give them to you. You can have them.
I appreciate that. Topps, the baseball card company, occasionally has done it's like weird subsets within their annual sets of cards, and they did one a few years ago with cards for it was like the anniversary of Major League, and they did cards for that, and they've done a couple other movies. I can't think of them all offhand, but they've had a few of those in the past where
They
they'll
sell
honor.
well?
Yeah, I had to buy them on the secondary market.
Oh man.
Yeah, they weren't crazy price, but they included some inserts like, autographs from Wesley Snipes and
Yeah, but how many did he do? Like two, and then you're
probably.
buying forever, and you can't find one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that one went to the owner's kid. That's where that went.
From a historical standpoint too, 8 Men Out is another good one. The 1919 Black Sox scandal.
Yes.
It's a little dense, and I think when I first watched it when it came out, so that came out in '88, and I was probably around 13 or so when it came out. It was a little dense for me at the time, but I've come to appreciate it
Maybe
now.
it's just the audience. You were expecting Sandlot, and instead you
Right.
got a little bit more than you cared to know.
Another thing that I do like to pop out, I haven't watched it really this year, but was the documentary Baseball by Ken Burns for
Oh,
PBS,
oh,
which is just a really deep dive into each inning is basically a 10-year span, more or less, in the history of baseball. And it's
you can
very
tell that he's
fascinating.
a fan
Yes.
just by the way that's put together. And I'll stop because I can't think of the guy's name, but he brought a Negro League player,
Hmm.
and he was featured heavily in the series. And the guy was the sweetest man you've ever met. It was really fun to talk to him because he talked about a game that maybe we didn't realize it was there.
You're out in Iowa. Did
Yes,
you ever see the movie Sugar?
sugar.
It's from 2008. It was kind of a lowish budget. I don't know if it was made for TV or just one of those that went short term in the theaters and then flew out. But it was really, if you get a chance, go back and check this one out. It takes place in Iowa.
Okay.
It follows a player that gets signed out of the Dominican Republic, which is a big thing in baseball, and it follows him for basically a season where he goes to spring training. He doesn't speak any English. This player, along with several other players who don't speak English, they go out to breakfast every morning, and the only thing they know how to order is pancakes. So they get pancakes every single morning, and then he gets assigned to a team in the Quad Cities, and he basically lives with a host family for the whole year, but is struggling to adapt. And it follows him through this entire season up until kind of like the end where he runs into problems. And it's really heartbreaking because I think they try to make it as accurate as possible to what a foreign born young player who kind of, he signs a bonus. It's probably, it's not a ton of money. It's but for a young player who's poor in the Dominican Republic, who maybe gets a $10,000 bonus or whatever it was, it's a huge sum of money that he can support his family. But then he's dropped into America and he doesn't know how to live. He has no connections. He doesn't speak the language, and it's really heartbreaking.
I must see that. Sugar.
Sugar.
I'll look for it. No, I didn't see it. It was not here. So I didn't have the exposure to that, but that does sound fascinating because, there are kind of tropes that they rely on, which
Mhm.
is, the losers becoming winners, the bad boy suddenly deciding that he's not going to go in that direction. So you don't get to really see what the reality of the thing is. And I always wonder, what about those who get cut? What happens to them? And what career do they have after that? And do they still talk about their baseball years, or are they, that's in the past? Or do they live in the past and that's all? So there's a good Pete Rose story in there somewhere.
So I think you would like Sugar then, because it kind
Yeah,
of gets into that. Check that one out,
I will
definitely.
look for it. Well, the season has begun. Are you as dedicated this year as you were in past years, or are you
pretty sucked in? I mean, the Mets won 101 games last year, and they're looking pretty good this year. So I'm going to be locked in for the better part of the summer, and we'll probably be crushed by the end of it.
You're going to make it all the way? Come on, you got.
I'll be crushed. It always ends in disappointment for me. That's life of a Mets fan.
And then you say, well, I'm just wearing this shirt because I'm a rapper.
That's right.
Right. That's my fun.
Yeah, exactly.
That the League of Their Own is one of those things that we see now with a trend, as I can see it in television, which is rebooting ideas or concepts and putting them out there on the small screen in a different way. And they did twist that one in a different way. And also the new Grease one, The Rise of the Pink Ladies, that goes in another direction as well. And there are other ones down the road, but one that I wish we could talk about is Dead Ringers. Dead Ringers was a David Cronenberg film with Jeremy Irons. And I remember seeing this thing, and it was as scary as you could get, because they were two doctors. And, at the time when I saw it, I always believed that you trusted a doctor. A doctor was citing gospel. So if he said that you needed to use some weird thing that he had invented, like the Mantle brothers do, I would go for it, right? And then I guess we're a little savvy now about all those kinds of things, but they've shifted it. So it's not twin brothers that are in the medical profession, it's twin women, and they're still called Beverly and Elliot Mantle, both played by Rachel Weisz, and they are interested in obstetrics and what they can do with that and how they could control life and birth. And I mean, it opens up a lot of areas that the first film never did. And it talks about the high cost of medical care and how it isn't necessarily a, kind of what we would consider a public kind of non-profit-y kind of thing. It's a profit center for people. And there are rich people investing in the kind of concepts that the Mantles come up with. And they're seeing it as a great revenue stream. And this thing digs into that concept where, they don't really care if they're hurting people in the process. They're going to make some money off this. So it's fascinating to see how they go through all that. They open it up to a different world, and the cast is largely female, and the people behind the cameras are female too. So they're giving a female perspective of all of this. I got to talk to Poppy Liu, who plays the assistant to the Mantles. I don't want to call her a maid, but she's certainly there all the time with both Beverly and Elliot. And she gets a chance to see how kind of corrupt they are and what they're doing. And the fascinating thing, you'll see this when you listen to the interview, is that Poppy is a doula in real life. She actually does have birthing experience with other people. And she talks about the life of a doula. But it is fascinating what she was able to glean from all of this and what she learned from the process. So that's in our interview with Poppy Liu from Dead Ringers. Poppy, can I ask you about being a doula? How does that play with this? Did this give you like different insight or a different view of everything that goes on in the film?
Yeah, I mean, I was a doula before this project happened. It kind of was just like a really serendipitous marriage of like worlds and interests. But yeah, I think being a doula is something that so near and dear to my heart. I think about sort of the reproductive state of this country a lot. And then I think to like encounter a script that is so captivating and compelling as a story, and also is very deeply embedded in the themes of, in my mind, reproductive rights, reproductive justice, the difference in birthing experience for different people based on their background, on their race, on their class status, on how much the medical system fails us, to have that as an undercurrent and backdrop for this incredibly visually captivating, dark, moody, sexy story. So cool.
Well, I was fascinated by the way the monetizing aspect of it. How, it's like having a child. No, we're making money off this. And it's like, wow.
It literally is, though. Have you seen, there's a documentary called The Business of Being Born? It literally,
Right.
I mean, like, even, and like, this is no shade at all to like doctors or OBGYNs, like heroes, incredible love, but it really is the medical system, like it's really based off of an industrial factory mentality where like people are like the products, like you want them in and out as fast as possible. It's based on efficiency, it's based on cutting costs, because that's how everything is based, and it ends up being that like the care and like what people actually need to have like a holistic, not even holistic, but just like a positive experience isn't,
Right.
it's not
Right.
necessarily prioritized by how the system works. It's really like get in, get the baby out, or like whatever, and like la 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 la. And I
Yeah.
think you encounter care through like individual people, but not because of like the system.
That, to me, that was even scarier than all of the kind of other things, especially when we saw the Cronenberg film where they had all those kind of tools and whatnot that scared the hell out of me. But
Yeah.
the idea that everything is so kind of hold and calculated, I guess, is what I see of that. For you, you dealt with both Beverly and Elliot. How
Yes.
difficult is that, or how easy was that, or how fun was that?
It's easy and fun because it's Rachel and she's a genius and it's incredible. But I mean, yeah, we, for the scenes where both twins are in them, we have to film them twice. So you twice as many takes, everything. She'll play it as one of the twins, Kitty Hawthorne, was incredible, who is both Rachel's body double and also plays the young version of Rachel's mother in the
Oh, wow.
flashback scenes, is incredible and brilliant. And she'll stand in for the other mantle twin, and and then, there'll be like a 30-minute or whatever changeover. Rachel will get from Beverly to Elliot or Elliot to Beverly, come back again. And like, I think even when you watch it, the way that these two characters are so specifically different, like there's even a scene where the two twins like they play each other as themselves, and the fact that that's done with so much like specificity and realness, like I think Rachel's a genius. She's playing two different people and then she's playing them play each other. It's yeah, it's really fun.
All right, Bruce, thanks for that interview. You were talking a little bit about a lot of programming now seems to be remakes of things or maybe stuff that's been sitting in development for a little while. We're in this threat of a writer strike. Am I correct?
Right.
What is going on there?
Well, and it could really delay the fall season. It could make content, kind of disappear. They would end up doing a lot of game shows and things that didn't need scripting. But what they also did back the last time I can remember is they took old scripts and reshot them. So they didn't need to have new writers. They just did old shows. And I'm sorry, I can't give one off the top of my head, but it didn't work. It was a concept that didn't work. Reality TV, however, was a good answer to all of that because they said, well, we really don't need a script. They're just talking. And so I think they would lean in heavier in that aspect. And maybe they would bring back stuff and say, we're going to remake it. I don't know. Interestingly, next week, we're going to talk about A Small Light, which is a National Geographic miniseries. And they had done a movie about the people that are covered in this, but not in such an extensive way. And it's about the people who helped the Franks hide out during World War II. Miep Gies, does that name ring a bell? Miep Gies. She was an assistant or a secretary of sorts to Mr. Frank. And he said, we've got to get out. Can you help us? And she didn't pause for a minute. She and her husband were very good at keeping their secret, hiding them, bringing them food, doing all this kind of stuff. And they really never got the attention that others thought they should have because they were very courageous in what they did. Well, now this miniseries opens that up and gives you a real good look at what they actually did and others like them and what kind of things they were able to do during World War II. But I talked to the stars of that show, and they had a unique perspective, particularly since, you know, they're young and they didn't have a point of reference for a lot of the things that were going on. So that'll be next week, A Small Light, and we'll talk to the stars of that.
I saw that Liev Schreiber is in that as
well. He plays
well.
Otto Frank, yeah.
Yeah.
And, he, you know, he's not in it that much,
okay,
but it is one of those ones where you go, I didn't recognize him, because it isn't one of those kind of roles that he's used to playing. It is a leap for him as well.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that one because, as I said, I love historical dramas, and as somebody who's got Jewish heritage, it
Right.
certainly will, you know, be a little bit touching for me as well.
They went on location to film a lot of. They didn't film in the Anne Frank house, but they did film nearby a lot of places. There's one where they jump in the water. And what you'll find, I thought really interesting about this, is that they were far more contemporary. I mean, you know how we think of people in the past, how kind of maybe closed up they are. And these people aren't like that. They were very fun. And Miep is one of those ones who just will, she's not going to think about it. If she should do it, she just jumps in and does it. And she's very good when she's dealing with the Nazis and how they want her to talk. So I think you'll enjoy how it spills out. And it also tells us that we too could make a difference if we only speak out and do what's right.
Wonderful. Well, we'll dive more into that next week. Until then, thank you for listening.
Until then, batter up.